So first of all, wanted to say welcome to everybody. Here we are on a new meeting, and we have some good stuff that we're going to be chatting about today. So first thing I do want to do, though, is to remind members when you are addressing the group, please use your microphones. We have, I think, one between two of you. You might need to move it a bit towards yourself, but we do want your comments to be heard and captured accurately. Our meetings are recorded for public access television and also for the purposes of putting the meeting minutes together. So that's why we want you to be heard clearly. And it would also remind us that during the presentation Q&A period, board members will have opportunities to answer questions first, and then public members may ask whatever questions they wish, and we have a microphone for their use. So again, welcome everybody. And I'm going to start out, if I can find my agenda. I've got too many pieces of paper here. All right, there we go. Just want to remind everyone that the next meeting that we have, full board meeting, will be on Wednesday, November the 9th. And at that time, our presentation topic is going to be excess contaminated facilities. And then also it will be time to introduce new members. But first of all, Sue Cange has something to talk to us about, I believe. Sue, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I know some of you might have heard the news because I've had an opportunity to speak with a few of you before the meeting, but I wanted to come and share with you that I have been given an opportunity to go up to DOE headquarters in an acting capacity as the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Environmental Management. That is the position currently occupied by Mr. Mark Whitney. Mark is departing. This Friday will be his last day, and he is going to take a job in the private sector, still supporting DOE and DOE cleanup, but instead of being a federal employee, he will again work for the private sector. And so this is a great opportunity for myself as well as for Oakridge. I'll be leaving on Friday and acting for a couple of months, and we'll see what happens. Most important, though, what that means is that Jay Mullis, who hopefully most of you have met. If not, this is an opportunity, the first of several, for you to get to know Jay. Jay is the deputy manager here in Oakridge. He's my deputy. And Jay is going to be acting for me while I am in Washington, D.C. And we have already switched such that he is now the Deputy Designated Federal Official, or DDFO, for the Site-Specific Advisory Board. So that was the position that I held, but of course that's not appropriate while I'm acting in a different role up in Washington. So Jay is taking over in that role. It's just coincidental, actually, that Jay was going to be giving the State of the Program presentation this evening anyway, because I thought it would be a great opportunity for you all to meet him if you have not had that opportunity and to start to get to know him. So not only is he starting with this meeting as the Deputy Designated Federal Official for the board, but he's also your presenter for the evening. So I hope that you all will take full advantage and get to know Jay. I will miss our interactions. I actually enjoy having the opportunity to sit down with each of you most months, and I look forward to coming back at some point and interacting with you all in the future in some capacity. So thank you very much for what you do for the department. It's very important. We take the Site-Specific Advisory Board role very seriously, and I know that you don't get much of a type of compensation for volunteering to be a part of the board, and I want to sincerely thank you for your time and efforts. So that's it. I haven't packed. I leave first thing Friday morning, and so I'm going to excuse myself and go home. I haven't been home yet today since very early in the morning, and turn things over to Jay.
Okay.
Any questions or anything before I go?
I just want to say we hope that things go well for you.
Thank you.
And we will miss you. I'm sure Jay will be a perfectly adequate, if more.
Jay's gonna do great. He's gonna do
I'm
great.
always striving for Adam.
Yep. But anyway, so we wish you luck and thank you for your service to us too.
Well, thank
Appreciate
you
it.
all very
Thank you.
much. Yes, thanks. All right, enjoy your evening.
Okay. And Jay, I guess you get to take the microphone.
I didn't realize it was going to be quite that quick, but that's okay. I'll try not to tell any inappropriate jokes here. Yeah, something I might be known for back in the office. I want to take a minute or two just to tell you guys where we're at with the funding process. You may have heard, watching the news, we're currently in a continuing resolution. Luckily enough, that the continuing resolution this year that we've gotten, it goes through December 9th, is sufficient to continue to cover all our current operations and initiatives and doesn't reduce us down. In years past, sometimes the funding mix between defense and UED&D funds caused us some problems, but that's not the case this year. And so hopefully by the end of the period, we'll have plenty of funding. There'll be, I'm sure, the Congress will work out and get us an omnibus bill or something like that. So that always wishful thinking, at least on my part. Vision 2016, which was the completion of the K-27 building out at ETTP, was finished up at the end of August. Hopefully some of y'all, if not all of you, had an opportunity to come participate in that historic event. So we are now focusing on Vision 2020, which in my presentation, I'm sure some of the current members know what that is, but some of the new members may not. So in the presentation, I'll cover that. If it's old news to you, let me know and we can move on. But Vision 2020 is basically the completion of ETTP. And so we're focusing on that work now and have moved on to the Poplar Creek facilities and starting to look at the groundwater and some of the EUs out at ETTP. And finally, Sue talked about some of the changes in the org. I do have an org chart up there. I don't know if that's, if you guys have seen the current organization. We reorged about a year ago. Dave here has just recently been promoted to Division Director of our Quality Management and, Mission Support Division. And so there's been a few changes within the org. You guys can see that. If Sue has briefed you on that, once again, let me know and we can move forward. Okay, well, good. And so I guess with that, that's my remarks as DDFO. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jay. We have a lot of new members, but some who were able to come to the meeting last month when I was not. So welcome to the new members that I either saw you today or saw you at the annual planning meeting, but appreciate that very much. See, I believe, Jay, do you have any information about welcoming new members?
I've actually got a fairly long list here with bios that I'll be happy to read. I understand the normal convention is you read each one and clap, but considering this is almost 2 pages, maybe we can just let me read it off. People can raise their hand or identify them. Maybe we should make them stand up. I don't know, for full embarrassment purposes.
Hand raising is sufficient.
Okay, all right. So I'll read it off and make some witty comments about people as I go through to make them feel comfortable. And then if we can hold our applause to the end, that would be great. So Catherine Bells lives in Knoxville and is a student at UT where she's studying nuclear engineering. She's the current president of the university's Health Physics Society and is a member of the university's chapters of the American Nuclear Society and Women in Nuclear. So, oh, okay. I didn't see you down there. Welcome. Christopher Beatty, is that the right pronunciation? Beatty, okay. Also lives in Knoxville and is a quality assurance engineer with Innovative Design, which provides support for the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor Project in the at the Oakridge National Lab. Previously served as a team lead with NASA in Huntsville and has also worked with the U.S. Space Army and Missile Defense Command and the UT Space Institute. I assume you're a rocket engineer, a rocket scientist? Yeah, okay. Received a BS in physics from the Georgia Institute of Technology and an MS in physics from Clark Atlanta University. He is the current president of the local chapter of the National Society of Black Engineers and is a member of several other organizations. Maria Gonzalez is the cafeteria manager at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Oakridge, where she's been employed since 1986. She previously worked as a secretary in Turin, Mexico, okay, where she received her Secretarial Academy certification. She received her GED from Pellissippi State Community College in Knoxville, and she lives in Oakridge. Paul Holden, I don't see Eddie here this evening. I know him as Eddie. So, lives in Knoxville and is a retired transportation logistics manager who worked with the Oakridge EM program until December of 2014. Before that, he worked for 31 years as a transportation logistics manager with Yellow Freight in various locations across the United States. He received a BS in transportation logistics from UT Knoxville. And what some of you may not know about Eddie that I do know, and you might ask him about, was he was a football star back in the day at Oakridge High School. So you might ask him about that sometime. Denny Sobek lives in Oakridge and is a teacher with the Oakridge school system, where she has been employed since 2003. She received her BS in botany from Iowa State University and a teaching certification in science from Texas Tech University. She's a member of the National Science Teachers Association and the Tennessee Teachers Association. Frederick Swindler lives in Rockwood and is a vice president consultant for quality assurance and regulatory affairs with IsoRay Medical in Richland, Washington. He was previously employed as a vice president for quality assurance and regulatory affairs with 2 other medical manufacturing companies. He received a BS in biomedical engineering from Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology in Terre Haute, Indiana, and an MBA from the University of Evansville in Indiana. He's a senior member of the American Society for Quality. Vanita Thomas. Yes. Hey, Vanita. Lives in Knoxville and is an occupational safety and health specialist with Alliant Corporation, which provides services for the Safety Service Division of Oakridge National Lab. She received a BS in chemistry from Columbia College in South Carolina and an MS in occupational safety and health environmental management from Columbia Southern University in Alabama. She's a member and the corresponding secretary for Delta Sigma Theta sorority and is a member of Jack and Jill of America and Delta Sigma Theta. Are you from South Carolina?
Yes, I am.
I am as well. I'm from Greenville. Went to school in Charleston, so nice to have a fellow South Carolinian here. Although I grew up as a Clemson fan, not a University of South Carolina fan. So I'm always happy when anybody beats South Carolina. Rudolph Weigel, welcome. Any kin to the wealthy Weigels? That's unfortunate. Yeah. Or perhaps access, right? Yes.
No free gas.
Yeah, or milk. Yeah. Lives in Oakridge and is a retired industrial hygienist who most recently worked for Concurrent Technologies Corporation, Arlington, Virginia, conducting industrial hygiene surveys at Army installations in support of the Army Public Health Command. His 36-year career has included work as a bioenvironmental engineer, environmental scientist, and hazardous waste program coordinator. He received a BS in occupational health and safety from Utah State University and an MS from East Tennessee State University. Philip Yeager?
He's not here.
Ah, okay. He's with Eddie. Lives in Oakridge and is a retired investment services manager who most recently was a vice president for Gosler Investment Management, Indianapolis. His career also includes positions as the Director of Consumer Relations with the Indianapolis Better Business Bureau and Assistant Vice President of City Securities Corporation, Indianapolis. He received a BS in Business Administration from Indiana Wesleyan University in Marion, Indiana. He serves on several Oakridge boards and organizations and is the treasurer for the Emory Valley Center Foundation. And students, Gabrielle McAllister.
We have no students here today.
Okay, all right. Well, then let's give everybody a round of applause.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, yes, thank you, and I'll add my welcome to everybody. We appreciate it, and also just make a note that Denny with Oakridge High School has been responsible for providing us with some of our student members from the Oakridge High School over the last 6 years or so. So appreciate that, because we really feel like the students have brought a lot to the group. So thank you for providing that role for us, and now for joining us. Okay. Okay, we have comments. Jay, do you have any comments?
Well, I think I already gave mine.
I was going to say, I
earlier,
think
so-
you're already done. Is Connie Jones or representative from EPA on the phone?
Yes, this is Connie Jones. I want to say welcome to the new members. I really don't have too much to offer in terms of announcements at this time, except that I did want to provide an update to the property transfer parcel for Zone 1. Actually, it was the Powerhouse, Duck Island, and 901 area. It was signed by our division director, and I believe DOE is processing that information. It's final now. So again, that's 662 acres that when it goes, that process is completed, will free up property for reindustrialization. So I wanted to give a status of that. Past that, I don't have any other announcements, but I'd be more than happy to attempt to answer questions if asked.
Thank you, Connie, and that's very good news about the Zone 1 area, so thank you for providing us with that information. Okay, I'm not sure if we have anyone on the phone from TDAC. Oh, you're hiding. You have a spot.
Yeah, we have a spot for you over here,
Yes.
Barbara.
Please join us at the big table. I know Christoph was unable to come today, and he had said he was sending a replacement. So presumably you'll be also adequate.
I'm happy to be here, just to represent PDAC and be part of the SSAB meeting. I've got nothing really to say at this time. Just here to take notes and make sure that the state is represented.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming tonight. Because after all, it's outside of your work hours, as is a lot of people here, so thank you very much. Okay, we have a public comment period.
We do. Public comment period. Start with. The public comment period is now open. Seeing no one had signed up for the public comment period, I shall continue. As a Citizens Advisory Board to the Department of Energy on environmental cleanup, we want to encourage the community at large to attend and participate in our board and committee meetings. If you are unable to attend, please send in your questions and comments to the address shown on the screen. Appropriate comments and questions will be read during the public comment section of the SSAB meeting and will be given the same consideration by the board and Department of Energy as those given in person. Meeting schedules and ways to communicate with the board can be obtained by calling 241-4583 or visiting our website. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And bang on time. So we will move into the presentation portion of the evening, which will be the state of the Oakridge Environmental Management Program. And Dennis, would you like to give us an introduction, please?
Yes. Jay Mullis is the Deputy Manager for the Department of Energy's Oakridge Office of Environmental Management. In his role, he assists in directing and overseeing the environmental cleanup of the Oakridge Reservation. This includes the former K-25 gaseous diffusion plant, the Oakridge National Lab, and the Y-12 National Security Complex. Jay was promoted to his current position in February of 2015. Previously, Jay was Director of Engineering, Safety, and Quality Division for the Oakridge Office of Environmental Management. In his capacity, he was responsible for OREM's engineering, nuclear safety, industrial safety, quality, and waste management program. Jay also served as the director of OREM's project management division. and led the source evaluation board that resulted in the award of UCOR contract. As you know, they are the primary contractor on the reservation. Jay holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the Citadel, a college in South Carolina. He is licensed professional engineer in the state of South Carolina. He completed extensive reactor operations training and qualifications while working for the Navy in Charleston Naval Shipyard. And he has been fully certified facility representative for DOE. Jay has more than 25 years of federal service. His experience consists of approximately 9 years working at the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program at the Charleston Naval Shipyard, with a balance of his service working for DOE in various assignments that include environmental restoration, decontamination, decommissioning, nuclear safety, and waste management activities. With that background, looking forward to Jay's presentation this evening on the state of the Oakridge Environmental Management Program. I know.
Is this where I'm supposed to stand or on the other side? Okay. I was told I'm on TV, so I always promise Tiffany Hearn, who used to work for us and watches public access TV, she works at UPF now, that if I was ever on TV, I'd give Tiffany a shout out, so there you go. Okay. There we go, okay. Well, an electrical engineer, I still can't do the gadgets. It was all analog back when I was in school. Some of the changes here that we've had, so if you've never been briefed on this, one of the challenges, and I'm just going to walk up here instead of trying to figure out how the laser pointer works, if it has a laser pointer, was to get the project management and the project controls folks together in the same division. So there was a lot of crosstalk on our projects because there seemed to be some gaps whenever we had them in different divisions. So that was one of the reasons for the reorg we had. We added, of course, the contracts group, which we used to get from the service center, the old ORO. We moved those in-house so that all our contracts now we can administer in-house and not have to go to science. And of course, we combined the facility representatives and the safety SMEs along with the engineering group so that everybody that had both field experience and field oversight responsibilities and the subject matter experts that support them, industrial hygiene, health physics, et cetera, and the nuclear safety and engineering folks were all in the same division. And part of that was to carve out the quality group so that they were a separate entity. They used to be about 5 years ago, and we had a reorg right before Mark Whitney got here and included them within the engineering organization, and they felt like they were buried down within the engineering organization and did not have access to senior management and did not have themselves as a single QA entity, but were kind of lost within the engineering organization. So part of that was to carve them out. What's not shown on here is I meet with them on a periodic basis so they have direct access to the front office, as it were. And then, of course, we had the program support group and the business services, this is where our regulatory affairs sits, SSAB administration, and over here are the fun things like IT, travel, training budget, et cetera. And so Dave, one of the changes is Dave, with Ed Worth's retirement, I don't know if y'all knew Ed, but he retired about a month and a half ago, and we recently promoted Dave to that position. So, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask as we go through. We don't have to wait to the end unless that's convention. Mitch talked about this a little bit earlier. A few years ago, Sue and Mark came up with a set of very clear expectations or goals to kind of define our plan in 4-year implementation periods. The first was Vision 2016, which was to get all the GDP plants down. We achieved that at the end of August 30, with the big celebration out there. Pretty amazing achievement. I came here in the mid-90s. Actually did not go into the federal building, went out to what was then called the K-25 site office, which was on site out there in a building that doesn't exist anymore. in K1001, in fact. And when I got out there were a lot of people on site. There was not a lot of work going on. There was a lot of S&M. Is that me causing that? Probably too close to that. A lot of S&M going on site, but really all that was going on out there was the Tosca incinerator. Move away from that. The Tosca incinerator, a few dirt cleanup projects. There. Okay. Okay. A few dirt cleanup projects. There were some cylinder projects out there, not the large cylinders, but just gas cylinders, and that was about it. So for me personally, it's been kind of amazing to see the transformation. This, of course, was the old portal. You used to have to go through that every day to access the site. Not so much anymore. So very different out there. Vision 2020 is to finish up ETTP and get that completed, which gives us the opportunity by 2024 to start the work in earnest over at Y12 with the Mercury cleanup. I'm not going to go into detail here. This is kind of amazing to me. Believe it or not, the 4.5 million square feet demolished isn't really amazing to me, I guess because I've been through all those buildings. It's the number of truckloads that was shipped and didn't get anybody hurt. So whoever came up, and I think this board had something to do with it, I think Steve McCracken did as well with the Hall Road, was a genius because that has kept us out of commerce for many, many, many of those shipments and has, I think, resulted in much better and safer operations. In fact, UPF uses part of the Hall Road now over at Y12, and there's interest as well with some of the science missions coming online to use portions of the Hall Road as well. So that actually has been a very big benefit to us, and I think earlier versions of the board, that was one of the board's recommendations. The other one was just kind of amazing to me is the miles of piping. I've been in the buildings, I got the square foot, but that many miles of piping, even though I've seen the piping, was just kind of amazing. So the numbers to me are kind of interesting. And of course, we've transferred quite a number of acres to private entities and non-DOE entities out of the site now. Here's the budget outlook for 17. It generally supports our program goals. You can see the president's budget. If you look down here at the bottom line, which is really where I'd like you to focus for a minute, we don't expect to get the president's budget. We expect to be somewhere between the House and the Senate mark. Either one of those lets us complete our priorities. Of course, the Senate mark's a lot better, but we suspect we'll be somewhere in between those two. I would point out that you find it here, historic preservation, the $6 million, that'll actually allow us not only to finish the History Center, but also to start on the equipment building. But without that, we still finish the design, we still finish the History Center. So if there's any questions on that? Okay. One of the things we want to do and we want to leverage is to all the experience that we've learned over the years at ETTP, and there's been a lot of hard lessons learned out there. Having worked here for a number of years in the ETTP program, I was out there for one of the early accidents where the gentleman died because of the fire when he was removing some of the converters in K33 to ship them up to Portsmouth and Paducah. I was out there when the gentleman fell through the floor. And so we've learned a lot of valuable lessons on how to D&D old, dilapidated buildings. We don't want to lose those lessons, so we want to take those lessons, the trained and experienced workforce we have, and transition them as smoothly as possible to continue the D&D efforts at Y12 and ORNL. Part of being able to do that over at Y12 are projects we need to start today. One of those is the mercury treatment facility for Outfall 200. That'll be an important control measure for us when we go after the WEMA area, the West End Mercury area at Y12, which is where Beta 4, Alpha 5, Alpha 4 are located. We need to have this in place when we start disturbing buildings and soils because we think the mercury flux will go up, and this will be a good control measure for that mercury flux. The other thing we're going to need is a new on-site disposal facility. EMWMF will basically be full with waste from ETTP. There may be a little bit additional space, but by the mid-20s, when we're doing D&D in earnest over there, we'll need another disposal cell. We have increased focus. Y'all have probably heard about some of this in the news. It actually, I think, made the Wall Street Journal. I didn't ever think I'd be on a program that made the Wall Street Journal. My kids one time Googled me and said, "You don't come up a whole lot on Google, Dad. Doesn't that suck for you?" And I said, "No, the smaller footprint I have in digital space, the better off I feel." But of course, I remember when you did work without email. My kids can't believe you could actually do work without email. So, but we're focusing our attention on reducing the excess facilities now that exist over at Y12 and ORNL. Oakridge has some of the worst of the worst. That was the quote out of, I can't remember if it was the GAO report or the IG report, but we've had reports out of both saying you need to do something about the buildings. There's 350 of these facilities in Oakridge, which accounts for about 25% of DOE's inventory, and 46 are classified as high risk or the worst of the worst, and which accounts for 40% of DOE's inventory of the high risk facilities. So here you have the Beta 4 building, you have the biology complex, and we're actually starting work. We've started work in 16 on these buildings. That funding will continue on into 17 to continue to do risk reduction activities. We don't actually have enough funding to start D&D, but we're doing removal of hazardous material, sampling, completion of the appropriate CD documentation so that we can get through our project management requirements within the department to be able to move forward to eventually do the D&D. So we're removing some of the COLEX equipment that are out there. So what we're trying to do is stabilize facilities so that they can go into long-term stewardship until we can D&D them, and over time reduce the risk, get rid of the source term that's in those buildings. NNSA, which owns some of these buildings, and of course Science owns the biology complex. NNSA also has money to start working on some of the buildings, and so we're working in concert with them. One of the things we did was take advantage of their roofing contractor to roof Alpha 4 while they're roofing Alpha 5 in the Beta complex. So there's a lot of cross-program synergy going on, which is a good thing. This will give you an idea of the magnitude of the problem, just to orient you a little bit. Now, this is the West End Mercury area here with the Beta 4, Alpha 5, Alpha 4 building. And so you're looking at the entrance to the plant down here, but all the red buildings are the excess facilities. Some of them are owned by EM, some of those are owned by NNSA, some by Science. Here's the biology building that's owned by Science, and there's actually an NE facility in here as well. So as you can see, that's spread throughout the Y12 complex. They would like to go from about an 800-acre operation to about a 100-acre operation, and essentially in the future be up in this area here with their new facilities. This is at ORNL. You can see we're kind of in the middle of the old downtown, and those are all the various facilities. To orient you, this is Graphite Reactor, which is part of the National Historic Park, Manhattan Park that's going on. Many of these facilities are already EM facilities. A lot of those are hot cell facilities and old reactors that were involved in various isotope production and research over there. You've got about 26 million curies and hold-up material in these facilities that need to be dealt with. Many of those transuranic and odd isotopes from all the isotope research. In addition to that, we have some other important programs that continue, treating and disposing of the true waste that's out there, direct disposition and processing of U-233. Direct disposition campaign is ongoing and going very well. Surveillance and maintenance of the facilities that we currently own, awaiting D&D. And what has become prominent here recently, the life extension programs and engineering evaluations that we're doing of some of the facilities that have to continue to operate at ORNL, such as LGWO. We actually had identified that we had some maintenance issues. Over the years, EM had reduced the maintenance budgets and focused on D&D, which has led to some problems out there. We actually recognized that, and we're starting to put money in that when the WIP accident occurred. The WIP accident actually complex-wide with the EM really put a spotlight on it. This is a picture of some of the LGWO piping that we found when we removed lagging. Yes? Either one of them.
LGWO.
Oh, sorry. Liquid gaseous waste operations. That's the, that takes all the liquid and gaseous waste that's at Orinell and treats it. So about 50% of that comes from EM operations, about 50% of the waste right now comes from Orinell operations. So without that, facilities at Orinell would actually, production facilities and research facilities would shut down. But you can see that you don't want that type of piping to exist. We removed the lagging. There's some others that are actually worse than that. We were going to have some of it RT, radiography on it for NDT purposes, non-destructive testing. Sorry if I'm using too many acronyms. When they removed the lagging or the insulation off the pipe, they were afraid to touch the pipe. It was in such bad shape. So we've got about a $5 million a year commitment right now in the budget for the next 5 years to take care of some of this. We're doing additional engineering evaluations of other systems out there, and so that number may actually increase a little bit depending on what we find. We're currently finishing up one at MSRE. In addition, we're continuing to execute our groundwater mission. We've got a 30-year commitment on the reservation to look at groundwater. We've got active pump and treat systems at all 3 sites ongoing right now. We're on site collecting data and performing analysis. We're currently finishing an off-site groundwater project. We've sampled a little over 40 locations. At least the department's opinion is, our preliminary review shows that we don't think there's any off-site groundwater or drinking water exceedances from DOE operations. But we are continuing to work with the state and EPA to define what the future programs will be and research will be on that project. And so the message here, at least for me, is we think we have a comprehensive program for the cleanup here. That's IFDP, which in fact I'll be in DC briefing on Monday to NNSA and Science. We have congressional support right now that's been very generous for our programs, and they fit in with our program priorities. And we have partnerships, we feel, with key stakeholders, such as this board, our regulators, to continue to make good progress here in Oakridge. And that's the end of the presentation. I'll take any questions now, or do I wait?
Okay, I want to remind people, if you want to ask a question, please turn your name tent up like this, and I will go around the room.
Okay, Ed?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. What would happen to the whole road after 2020?
Well, it depends. The whole road, the portion that goes from ETTP over to Y12, we're actually looking for a partner to take over if they want it. So for instance, Y12 will be storing material for UPF out at 1065, K1065. If they want the whole road to transport that material over, we would certainly be willing to discuss that with them. If the state or Crowet or somebody like that, or one of the businesses wants it, but ultimately EM doesn't need the whole road, so our ultimate disposition, if you find no other takers for it, would be that portion of the whole road we would essentially abandon. I'm sure we would have to do some grading and restoration, but we would stop using and maintaining the whole road.
All right. In terms of the budget, so if we go with the best case scenario, an average between the Senate and Congress, does that mean that if you take the average, you're going to be about $40 to $50 million short, more than likely, than 2016?
No, I don't think we will. In 2016, we got about $100 million plus up. So the president's budget in 2016 was in the 360 range. So we actually ended up in 16 with about 100 million. I think it was 108 million above the president's budget, if I remember right off the top of my head. So the president's budget actually is more in 2017 than it was in 2016. And so either the House or Senate mark makes us okay for our program priorities. Obviously, the Senate mark is much more generous, and a lot of that is in excess facility efforts. But even the president's budget, I think, contains about 10 million to focus on excess facilities. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Then in terms of the excess facilities, the D&D, Is it gonna go beyond 2024, you think?
The D&D at Y12 and RNL will just start in '24. The D&D at ETTP will finish up by 2020.
2020?
And so there'll be groundwater, there'll be some post-closure activities, but the plan is to try to have ETTP closed sometime between 20 and 24 and have that workforce moved over to Y12 to start D&D and restoration activities over there in earnest by 2024.
Jay, do you think the D&D part of the excess facilities, it'd be more difficult, more expensive?
I
Done.
don't know that it'll be more difficult or expensive. One of the things that has had us concerned that we've been talking to UCOR about, and of course, UCOR really can't do that work, right? UCOR's contract is really a closure contract for ETTP with some work at Y12 and RNL. So when we go in earnest to D&D at Y12, we'll have to have gone through a new procurement and have a new contractor on board.
I see.
So we're looking at 18, 19 standing up an IPT. But one of the things we've been talking to them about is, you know, the facilities at ETTP have generally been very similar facilities. The gaseous diffusion plants are different generations, different size equipment, but essentially the same hazards within the buildings. So you get fairly, you know, you get some experience in K33, for instance, which is where it really started, and you just carry that forward as you went through the gaseous diffusion buildings. As you went back in time, there were some different materials. You know, there were different materials that were used in K25, for instance, in the mid-40s than there were in K31 or K33 that I think was built in the mid-50s. 56 or 59 sticks in my head. So there was a difference in some of the materials, both of construction, some of the materials that were actually used in the operations. But by and large, the hazards were similar. As we move over to Y12, it's going to be different hazards, right? So, in different types of buildings. And so that has a big concern. We've been talking to the contractor about that you really need to be aware that you are not complacent when you get into these buildings because of the different types of hazards that are there. Different materials were used for processing over there.
But in the process, Jay, lessons learned will start playing a big role, I guess, huh?
Well, you'll have lessons learned from how to approach things, right? You keep the building shell intact. You don't let the roofs get in bad shape because once the building shell starts degrading, it's hard to put people in there because it's not the nuclear risk. It's not the material going critical. It's stuff falling on people, people falling through floors. You don't have good structural components anymore. You're not sure about electrical systems and how to lock out, tag out those systems because over 40 years, you don't know where things went. You've let rainwater get into it. You don't have good grounds anymore. So those types of lessons learned will be directly transportable.
Good.
So,
All right. Thank you, Jay.
Any other? Yes, sir.
I'm going back to your surveillance and maintenance program. With regard to that, are concerns that the team finds that they brought forward to the FFA parties to reevaluate priorities?
I'm sure they will be if there are major issues found within the buildings that would affect the FFA. So I don't, Dave, I can't imagine off the top of my head anything that would.
Well, we when it comes to how we spend our money, we share all of the data on how we spend our money with the regulators every year, and every year there has been an appreciable portion of it that goes to making sure that our liquid and gaseous and water wastes are all managed well. Those are generally regulated actually by, not the oversight office here, but by other components of the state regulatory agency. If it comes to maintaining compliance with laws and avoiding discharges, we don't have negotiational flexibility. We have got to, at a minimum, make sure that our water treatment plants are operating properly and so forth. So we're not going to trade that off in order to do some groundwater pump and treat or soil dig somewhere. If we're talking about something that's discharging to a stream or into the worker's environment, that has to be our highest priority. But I think we do a pretty good job of sharing the budget decisions and making people familiar with the technical challenges that are associated with our surveillance and maintenance program.
I think my concern would be is if you do find something, I know a lot of times your budget is already, as far as what you plan to do, is already there. And so something would have to be taken off.
Yeah, that's correct. So if, for example, we have a big challenge, the $5 million we're talking about a year proves not to be enough, and we need twice that, it certainly could impact some other commitment we've made to tear a building down or dig up a burial ground. And we would have to go to our partners in the cleanup program and negotiate relaxation of some schedule somewhere.
That's not the plan right now.
Right.
The plan is the 5 million is above and beyond what we had planned over the last few years. So, does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, there are. MSRE and HRE part of the plans for the demolition here at ORNL?
They are. Of course, MSRE, you've got the problem with the salts and how you get the salts out and what you're going to do with the salts. Both of those are further in the future. They're not considered part of the worst that need immediate attention. HRE a little bit, and we are spending some money this year. We thought Colex would not cost us quite as much as it is to remove. We got out there and found some material we weren't expecting, and so we've not been able to do everything in HRE that we wanted to, but there will be money spent on that to remove asbestos, get the water out of the basement that's in there. MSRE, right now we're doing an engineering study. I was briefed on that a couple weeks ago with some of the other EM staff, DOE staff. We should get that report at the end of August, or end of October 21st timeframe, that will lay out some of the problems they've got out there. And so we can go through and start deciding what needs to get immediate attention, what may take a little bit longer. One of the interesting things, if you know much about MSRE, we have to pump down every so often because you've got reactive gases that come off, and so there's a question about how corrosive those have been on the vessels. And they've recommended we put some type of continuous sparge, so you get a continuous sweep with nitrogen fluid as opposed to having to go in and pump it down every so often. So we should get those recommendations, and that'll be fit into the budget cycle that Dave was talking about, so we can start making decisions. Unfortunately, we don't have enough money to do everything.
Right, that's
So,
the final disposition of the salt.
correct.
And where it's gonna go.
Yeah, one of their main recommendations is get the salt out of there and do something with it.
Yeah, but what?
But how?
Yeah, but
And
how
where?
and what?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right. The how's more interesting to me than where you would send it, because I don't know how you reliquefy it and get it out of there safely, but, so. Any more questions?
Hang on, yes.
I'm not a member of the board. Can I-
Yes,
Sure.
yes, just, yes, of course you can.
As you plan.
Do they want
Can
you to
use
use
the
it?
microphone? Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Stuart Vogel, a resident living nearby at White 12. If things go as you plan, when do you expect the additional waste landfill to be constructed? And
We would like to have the first two cells built by the mid-20s, so mid-2020s, so that 2024, 2025, 2026 timeframe fits in right now with what our expectations are for the schedule.
thank you.
And of course, that's funding dependent and activity dependent to some degree, which is why I can't say this day, but.
Thanks.
Okay, that looks like we have all the questions. Thank you very much, Jay. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you all.